Hey everyone, today we're going to follow the blood-stained footprints of a man who became a myth. You've seen the helmet, the sword, the glare, but behind the icon was a real person. Spartacus. Enslaved, brutalized, and forced to fight in the sand pits of Roman spectacle, he became something Rome never expected. A threat, not just to its armies, but to its very idea of control. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Wherever you are in the world, whatever the time on your clock, I'm inviting you into a world of sweat, blood, and rebellion. Now let's listen to the compelling story in this video of mine. Section 1. You shuffle forward, ankles bruised from iron, your skin chafed raw from ropes, and your head down, not out of shame, but strategy. You're Spartacus, a Thracian by blood, a Roman slave by force. And this is the lowest pit the world could throw you into. Your journey begins not in legend, but in the dirt. You were a soldier once, a horseman in Thracian armor, fighting for, or maybe against, Rome. The records are thin, contradictory. Some say you deserted, others that you were captured as a prisoner of war. Doesn't matter. They marched you away from your homeland, past screaming women, scorched villages, and broken warriors. They didn't just break your body, they unmade your name. The slave traders didn't see a man. They saw meat, broad shoulders, long legs, fighter's build, not fit for farming, fit for killing, for entertainment. So they sold you to a lanista, a gladiator master near Capua. A name whispered with dread among the enslaved, Batiatus. The ludus of Capua isn't what the arena-loving tourists think. It's not just practice swords and heroic poses. It's humiliation. Naked assessments. Food rationed like you're a dog in a cage. They starve your dignity first, then feed your rage. That's how they make gladiators. You're thrown into the training yard with Gauls, Germans, Africans, all caught in Rome's net. Some speak your tongue, most don't. But pain? Pain speaks all dialects. The doctorese, drill masters, work you until your muscles scream. You learn to parry, to lunge, to kill slow or fast, depending on what the crowd wants. You sleep with one eye open. You eat beside corpses. You don't even remember the word tomorrow. And yet, something in you refuses to die. It starts small. A shared piece of bread, a stolen dagger, a nod from Crixus, a Gaul built like a boulder. He's fierce, but he watches you when you fight. You're not just surviving, you're studying. Every man here is a spark waiting to catch. And in a place this dry with cruelty, all it takes is one flame. Some nights you whisper in the shadows. There's talk of escape. Laughable. The compound is sealed. Guards with whips, watchtowers, iron bars. The walls are high and the punishment higher. But you remember your past. You were no stranger to tactics, to deception. You think like a soldier, not a slave. You map routes in your mind, count guards, weigh risks. Then, opportunity knocks, not with a sword, but a spoon. A kitchen revolt. That's where it begins. Not with swords, but skewers and cleavers. One cook insults a Thracian too loudly. The Gauls step in. The guards intervene. A pot flies. A neck snaps. Blood hits the wall. You leap into action, not away from the chaos, but into it. Within minutes, 70 of you overwhelm the armory. It's a storm of rage. Some fall, others flee. You don't. You lead. Outside the gates, the countryside sprawls like a challenge. You flee to Mount Vesuvius, not to hide, but to regroup. Rome thinks you're a rabble of angry slaves, but already you're more than that. You're a leader now, and the name Spartacus begins to mean something more than man. It means resistance. Even as you reach the smoky slopes of Vesuvius, breathing hard, blood on your knuckles and freedom in your veins, you know this is just the beginning. You don't want revenge. Not just that. You want justice. You want freedom for yourself and for every person still chained in Rome's belly. The ludus thought it broke you, but it forged you. You wake up on the slopes of Vesuvius with dirt in your teeth, a stolen blade in your hand, and freedom, raw, fragile, precious, tight in your chest. The air up here tastes different. Crisp, wild, nothing like the suffocating stench of the ludus. But don't get comfortable. Freedom on a mountainside, with 70 men and a dozen scraps of armor, isn't safety. It's just a pause before Rome remembers to come hunting. You organize the camp without declaring yourself leader. No one votes. No one needs to. They watch how you move, how you listen, how you speak with purpose but not pride. You don't scream orders. You share burdens. That's what sets you apart from the masters you escaped. Still, gladiators aren't an army. They're fighters, yes, but a different kind. Showmen, loners, survivors. You need to unlearn the sandpit and relearn the battlefield. You remember the rhythms of cavalry and infantry. You remember formation drills. Slowly, so do they. Each day becomes a drill. Scouting, sparing, watching the Roman roads for supply wagons and patrols. Your people grow. Escaped slaves trickle in like water through cracks. Some are shepherds, some house slaves, some former soldiers themselves. Men and women, even children. They don't carry swords, but they carry something else: rage. And so you train. You use what you have. Spears sharpened from sticks, shields from wagon boards, helmets from old farm tools. You take on the discipline of the Roman army, but throw in something Rome never expected: desperation. Then come the raids. At first, it's livestock, food, clothes. But soon, you start targeting supply routes, outposts, even small townships. The Roman authorities laugh at first. A pack of rabid slaves causing local chaos? That's no war. That's pest control. They send a militia down the slopes to deal with you. Hundreds of men in bronze with short swords and snide grins. They expect a stampede of half-naked brutes. What they get is a coordinated strike. You trap them on narrow paths, block their escape, and then roll down sharpened logs, spears hidden like teeth in the grass. Chaos, blood, screams. The hillside drinks Roman arrogance that day. You win, not by miracle, but by strategy. News spreads like smoke. The slaves have a leader, a real one. In Capua, in Rome, in whispered rumors along the Appian Way, your name becomes more than just breath. It becomes a fear. Still, with each victory, you ask yourself, what am I building? Is this a rebellion? A nation? Or just the longest, bloodiest escape in history? You keep drilling, keep training. Not because you're obsessed with war, but because you know Rome is obsessed with control. And they're coming. Your lieutenant Crixus is like a thunderstorm in human skin. Impatient, fierce, loyal, but you see the tension rising in his eyes. He doesn't want to run. He wants to fight. He believes in revenge. But you believe in escape. That difference, it'll cost something, just not yet. The next Roman force is larger, smarter, but still underestimates you. They push you back, trap you on Vesuvius, and celebrate early. Your men are boxed in, starving, cliffs at your back. You should have died there. But instead, you go over the edge. Not metaphorically. Literally. You rappel your fighters down a sheer cliff using vines and ropes made from scavenged fabric. One by one, 100 men descend in the dark. Then you strike from behind. The Romans never even draw formation. When the sun rises, you're gone, and they're dead. Rome begins to take you seriously, but not yet seriously enough. You return to your ragged camp, bloodied but breathing. Crixus claps you on the back. Others begin calling you something new: dux, leader, commander. You don't answer to it. You don't need titles, but deep down you feel it. You're no longer just a man running for freedom. You're becoming the one thing Rome never planned for: a tactician with a cause. In the weeks that follow, your army swells. You gain not just fighters, but engineers, builders, cooks, even teachers. You start to resemble a roaming society, not just a war band. Campfires stretch far into the valleys, crude tents, children laughing. Broken families stitched together again under your command. You never asked to lead a nation, but that's what it's starting to feel like. And Rome, it's beginning to realize that too. You sit by the fire, sharpening a stolen Roman gladius, while across the clearing, Crixus argues with Castus and Gannicus. Again, the question is simple: what now? You've beaten back militias, outmaneuvered local garrisons, and made fools of noble Roman commanders. But now you're more than 70 men. You're 10,000. And every single one of them expects something more than just hiding in the woods. Freedom. Yes, but freedom to what? That's when the idea strikes you. Not as a dream, but a necessity. You can't just run. You have to break Rome. The breakout at Capua was just the beginning, a lightning strike. But what you're doing now? It's war. You've gone from a gang of fugitives to a force of slaves, rebels, shepherds, deserters, outlaws. And they're looking to you to lead them through the dark. That's when the plan is born. You don't shout it. You lay it out like a commander at a strategy table. You've studied the maps, roads, rivers, mountain passes. You can't hold ground. Rome would crush you in siege, but you can stay mobile. You can sting them where they're soft, and you can keep growing. You descend into the countryside in waves. You raid estates, not just for food, but for people. You liberate entire villages. Field slaves rise up at the sound of your banners, and they come. Not just men, but whole families. some with only sandals and farming tools, others with years of hate carved into their bones. You don't just fight, you liberate. With each victory, your army swells 20,000, then 30, some say even 70,000. You stop counting. You're building something ancient Rome never imagined, a multi ethnic, multilingual ragtag society where the only law is no more chains. Rome tries to spin it, of course. They call you barbarians, looters, bandits. But something about your discipline unnerves them. You don't raise temples. You don't slaughter for pleasure. You aren't trying to be kings. You're trying to be free. Still, there's another truth growing beside your victories. You're not all one mind. Crixus grows restless. He wants to take the fight to Rome, not just dance around it. He speaks to others in private, Gauls and Germans mostly, calling for action, glory, vengeance. You respect him. He's fire to your stone. But fires burn bridges. One night, he comes to you directly, stares across the fire. We split, he says. You go north, I go south. Let the world shake on both ends. You don't stop him. A few thousand march with him, brave, skilled men. But it stings. It feels like losing a part of your own sword arm. Still, your goals are different. You're playing the long game. If you can get your army across the Alps, scatter into Gaul and Thrace, maybe even Germania, Rome can't follow. Your people would be free. That's always been the mission. But then, the worst news imaginable. Crixus is dead, crushed in battle near the river Salaris. The Roman general Lentulus lured him into an open plain. No retreat, no mercy. They didn't just kill him. They paraded his body, mocked it. And suddenly, your mission is no longer clean. You gather your army. You hold a funeral not in silence, but with fire. Then you march straight toward the Roman positions with the fury of 1,000 funerals echoing in your chest. You crush Lentulus's army like stepping on a snake. Then you take 300 Roman prisoners and force them to fight each other, gladiator style, in honor of Crixus. That's when Rome finally stops laughing. No more provincial commanders, no more containment. The Senate calls in real generals. But by then, you've already shown something horrifying to them. You are no longer just a slave rebellion. You're a force with strategy, vengeance, and vision. Even as your people chant your name by firelight, even as freed slaves kneel and thank you, you feel the pressure in your chest like a tightening rope. You didn't start this to build an empire, but it's starting to feel like one. You stand at the edge of a cliff near Vibo, the sea crashing below and the wind tugging at your cloak. Behind you, an army that shouldn't exist, a swelling, breathing, chaotic miracle. Thousands of freed slaves, most untrained, some armored in scavenged Roman gear, others still barefoot, bruised, but burning with belief. You look out, not to admire the view, but to plan the next move. Because Rome isn't coming anymore. Rome is already here. You've just crushed 2 consular armies. Yes, consular. Men with purple stripes and noble lineages. You lured one into the mountains, trapped them with scorched earth, then slammed their retreat with flanking infantry you trained yourself. The second you annihilated in a forest ambush so brutal, even your veterans flinched at the silence that followed. No cheering, just crows. The victories were beautiful, but they were loud, too loud. Now Rome is calling in someone different. They send Marcus Licinius Crassus. You've heard of him. Every slave has. One of the richest men in the Republic, builder of fortune on burned homes and stolen debts. He's not just wealthy, he's cruel. He doesn't fight with glory. He fights to erase, and he brings something no one else has yet: discipline. Crassus doesn't just build camps, he builds fear. When 2 legions under his command retreat in battle, he revives a Roman horror long buried: decimation. Every 10th man is chosen by lottery and beaten to death by his comrades. It works. The soldiers stop retreating. You, meanwhile, are changing too. You're not just trying to survive anymore. You're trying to keep a society alive while hunted. Your army is a city on the move. Blacksmiths, cooks, children, medics, fighters, all trying to live one day longer. You divide into smaller groups, move in shifts, and train even the weakest to wield a spear. You can't afford fear anymore. Still, cracks are showing. Some of your lieutenants question the next move. Do you march north to the Alps again? Or do you turn south and take Sicily? You tried once before to escape by sea. Pirates had promised ships in exchange for Roman gold seized in battle. You paid. They vanished. That betrayal haunts you like a scar across the back. Now, even as your scouts report Crassus building trench lines, trenches, across the neck of Italy, to trap you like an animal, You know one thing. You must choose. You can't keep dancing between battle and escape. The road ends here. Crassus has 6 legions. You outnumber him. Barely. But numbers mean nothing if your fighters are tired, scared, and stretched too thin. So you fight dirty. You launch night raids, burn supplies, send feints and shadow movements to confuse him. For weeks, you make it seem like you're slipping past until the final trap closes. He walls you in. Imagine it. A trench nearly 50 kilometers long, reinforced with stakes and earthworks. A line meant to hold an entire nation's worth of rebels in place. No one in the Senate believed it possible, but Crassus built it and manned it. And you? You dug under it. At night, your engineers, freed slaves who once built Rome's aqueducts, craft a tunnel beneath the barricade. It takes days. Your soldiers work with their bare hands. No rest, no light. But when the hole breaks through and your scouts pour out like water, it's your turn to strike again. You burn one side of the Roman line, seize provisions, evacuate a third of your people before Crassus even realizes what's happened. But he's learning, adapting, no longer chasing you. Now he's herding you. Southward, toward the sea. The worst part? You're falling for it, because your only escape now lies across the water. So again, you reach out to the pirates. A different crew. Same promise, ships, safe passage, Sicily. You offer more gold, you offer anything. And once again, they vanish. You stand on the coast near Rhegium, watching empty waters, your breath hollow in your chest. The sea is silent, no sails. They've betrayed you. Again. And Crassus is coming. Behind you, your army begins to crumble. Small groups try to escape, some surrender, some defect. Others desert entirely. The families, the children, most can't keep marching. And now, there's nowhere left to run. This isn't rebellion anymore. This is a siege. And you're on the wrong side of the walls. You pace the beach like a caged lion, eyes locked on the horizon, hoping for sails that won't come. The wind kicks dust over your shoulders, but there's no hiding now. Crassus is behind you, Rome is around you, and the sea has betrayed you twice. So what do? You dig in. Not just in the dirt, but in your soul. You begin fortifying your position near Petelia. Trenches, watchposts. You split your forces into smaller, faster-moving cells, trying to stay one step ahead of Rome's hammer. You know Crassus is close. You also know something else. His pride might be your last advantage. The fighting becomes constant, not grand battles, but bleeding skirmishes, ambushes, harassment. You hit supply wagons, you bait patrols, you make Rome pay for every mile it takes back. Your fighters are weary, hollow-eyed. Some don't believe anymore. But they follow you, not because they think they'll win, but because you're still walking forward. Crassus, though, has momentum. And now he has something else, reinforcements. Pompey. The Senate has called in another general, the other rising star of the Republic. While you bleed Crassus in the toe of Italy, Pompey returns from Spain with legions behind him and ambition in his eyes. He hasn't fought you yet, but you know what this means. They're planning to crush you together. No more humiliation, no more underestimation. They want to end you. You feel the clock winding down. You gather your remaining commanders, Gannicus, Castus, the last of the old gladiators. Some want to try one last escape. Others want to split into cells and flee into the mountains. But you've made your choice. You won't run again. You decide to meet Crassus head-on before Pompey arrives to steal the victory and the credit. Maybe you can break through. Maybe you can scatter. Maybe you can strike so hard. Crassus bleeds long enough for the rest to get away. But deep down, you know. This is it. You rally your army, what's left of it. Tens of thousands still stand, battered but unbroken. You give no speeches. You've never needed to. Your presence is the speech, the scars, the grit, the fire in your eyes. That's what they follow. Then you move. South of the Salaris River, near Lucania, your scouts find Crassus's army digging in again. No trick this time. He's not flanking. He's waiting. Confident. He thinks you'll try to run again, but you don't. You charge. The final battle isn't a story. It's a storm. You lead the front lines yourself. No horse, no helmet. Just your blade and the momentum of every death, every injustice, every broken chain behind you. Steel crashes against steel. You see Gannicus sweep through a flank like a madman. Castus screaming orders. Your fighters don't march in formation. They surge, a wave of desperation and fury. Crassus's lines buckle. You break through once, nearly reach his command tent. They say you came within yards, that your blade split shields and your fury bent spears. Some even say you wounded him. But the weight of Rome is too much. The legions close in, the circle tightens. And finally, you fall. They never find your body. Crassus combs the field, piles the dead, identifies leaders. But you vanish into legend. Some say you died standing. Others say you crawled into the forest, wounded but alive, watching your army die from the shadows. There are even whispers that you escaped again and lived out your days under a false name. But Rome didn't need your body. They had your message, and it terrified them. You'd think Rome would let the silence fall after your death, that they'd bury your name along with the tens of thousands of others who fell beside you. But that's not how power works. No, Rome makes examples. And what they did next wasn't just punishment, it was theater. 6,000 of your captured followers, 6,000 souls, are marched to the Appian Way, Rome's most famous road. From Capua to the gates of the city itself, nearly 200 kilometers, they are crucified one by one. Every few dozen paces, a new cross. Every cross, a warning. Not for you. You're already gone. For the world. The message is simple. This is what happens to those who rise. You can almost hear the hammering as the wood splits, the nails scream through wrists and ankles. Families weep. Strangers avert their eyes. The road that once carried armies and triumphs now carries death. Rome calls it justice. But under the surface, something is different this time. There's fear in the city, because Spartacus, the man they mocked as a runaway slave, a bandit with muscle, had nearly broken them. 2 years of war, dozens of battles, a republic forced to beg its richest men to stop the bleeding. Crassus returns to the Senate with a mixed welcome. He claims victory, but so does Pompey. Pompey, who mopped up a few escaping bands near the north and declared he ended the war. The two men glare across the forum, each hoping to leverage your rebellion into political power. Your death becomes their stepping stone. Crassus wants glory. Pompey wants prestige. The Senate? They just want to forget how close the world came to turning upside down. But the people, they remember. Not the rich, pampered aristocrats, but the poor, the forgotten, the ones still living in slums, still working to the bone. They whisper your name in dark taverns. They pass your story to children. They don't see a rebel. They see a ghost, a flame that dared to flicker against the wind. And your army, though broken, doesn't disappear entirely. Some survivors slip into the hills of Lucania. Some fade into trading ports under false names. Others reach the Alps after all. They carry nothing but memories and scars, but those are enough. Enough to plant something dangerous, hope. In the years to come, other rebellions rise, not as large, not as dangerous. But every time a slave picks up a stone, every time a farmer spits on a tax collector, they think of you. Rome tries to bury the idea. They don't write books about you, no statues, no parades. But the silence speaks louder than any trumpet. Because they knew what you were. Not just a gladiator, not just a general. You were something more dangerous than all of that. You were proof. Proof that a man, no matter how broken, could stand against an empire. They said you hesitated. That when your army was at its height, nearly 70,000 strong, you stood at the edge of Rome itself and turned away. That you could have taken the city. That the gates were vulnerable. That panic reigned in the Senate. And yet you walked. Even your closest lieutenants questioned you. Castus had shouted that you were wasting the moment. Gannicus stomped out of the war tent, muttering curses. And Crixus, when he still lived, looked at you with fire in his eyes and said, "If not now, when?" But you didn't march. You led them north, to the Alps, to escape. You knew what was inside Rome. Not just walls, but legions. Walls with engines, streets with ambush points, civilians ready to riot in defense of their masters. You weren't here to conquer a city. You were here to free a people. Still, the army followed, grudgingly. You led them north through the Apennines, avoiding major roads, sticking to the forests and broken hillsides. You fed thousands on stolen wheat, herded sheep through enemy lands, and turned ex-farmers into scouts. Every bend in the path offered a decision, to press forward toward the mountain passes or to turn and fight. That pull never left your side. You'd get so close you could smell the alpine wind. You'd see the white caps glowing like ghosts on the horizon. Freedom lay beyond, but you stopped. Why? The truth is, no one agrees. Historians argue. Some say your army had grown too large to move through the narrow mountain trails. Others believe your fighters didn't want to leave. Thracians wanted to go north. Gauls wanted to head west. Italians wanted to stay and fight. And you? Maybe you realized something dark. There was no home to go back to. You'd seen it too often. Slaves liberated from Roman villas only to realize they had nothing. No land, no language, no family left. Maybe you knew that crossing the Alps would scatter everything you'd built. Maybe your dream was no longer escape, but something bigger. A nation, a new order, a life made, not found. So you turned back south. That's the moment your fate was sealed. Rome saw it too. When word reached the Senate that you had abandoned the northern route, they stopped trembling. They stopped preparing for siege and started preparing to trap you. Crassus sharpened his sword. Pompey started marching from Hispania. The Senate clutched its togas and whispered of crucifixions to come. But your army? They didn't know it yet. They still believed. You gave them purpose. You drilled them like soldiers. You spoke of a new life in Sicily, of ships and harvests and freedom. And they cheered, because what else could they do? They were no longer just escapees. They were a people, bound not by citizenship, but by defiance. And so, when you turned south and led them into the jaws of the Roman war machine, they followed. Not blindly, but because no one else had ever shown them the way out. And because they still believed that you, Spartacus, could walk through fire and come out clean on the other side. The Alps are behind you now. Snow-capped dreams turn to mist. Ahead, fire, betrayal, and the open jaws of an empire that finally takes you seriously. You know what turning south means. No more illusions. No more escape. Now you have to win. But Rome has changed the game. Crassus isn't a fool. While you move south, he digs in deep. Fortifications, trenches, supply lines that don't falter. He's not playing hero, he's playing butcher. And he knows one truth you've known since the sands of Capua. It's not about who hits hardest. It's about who lasts longest. You move your army like a ghost, appearing near Tarentum one week, storming a Roman outpost the next. You raid estates not for gold, but for grain, weapons, iron, horses. You're feeding an army that shouldn't exist, and you're keeping hope alive. But hope is growing thin. Crassus is squeezing Italy like a vice. His legions split the countryside into kill zones. Patrols cut off your scouts. Some of your supply routes vanish overnight. And still, he never gives chase. He waits. He's trapping you. Your lieutenants know it. You know it. But what else can you do? You send envoys to the pirates again. New crew, new gold. Same promise, Sicily. Just one island away, fertile and ripe with rebellion. If you can land there, you could reignite the fire, live to fight another season. You empty your war chests, packed with loot from Roman villas and treasury wagons. You wait, but they don't come, just like before. No sails, no smoke, just the sea, vast, empty, and laughing in your face. The betrayal hits harder this time, not because you trusted them, but because you needed them. Now there's no more illusions. You're surrounded. Crassus sees his chance and takes it. With terrifying efficiency, he builds a trench across the narrow neck of Italy, blocking the tow from the rest of the country. Nearly 50 kilometers of ditch and wall, a line of fortifications to trap you inside. Rome isn't chasing ghosts anymore. It's bottling lightning. You're impressed in a cold, terrible way. The trench isn't just military genius. It's symbolic. It says, you don't get to leave, but you don't panic. You adapt. You order your men to fake a full frontal retreat. You shift pressure points across the trench, probing weak spots. Then, under moonlight, your engineers, former builders of Roman aqueducts, dig beneath the line. A tunnel. Hours of clawing through wet clay, holding torches in their teeth, not making a sound. You don't sleep. You listen. When the tunnel breaks through, you pour your cavalry through it and smash a Roman detachment on the far side. You seize their supplies, burn their towers, and clear a path. Thousands escape. Thousands more stay trapped. You split your army again and again, trying to stay mobile, trying to keep Crassus guessing. But now the game is different. He doesn't chase, he stalks. And Rome? It tightens the noose. Pompey lands in the north, fresh from Spain, claiming victory before even unsheathing his blade. Another general, Lucullus, returns from the east with veterans itching for a fight. You're no longer facing one man, you're facing the whole republic. And yet, your army still believes in you. That's the part they never understood. You've lost battles, you've lost friends, you've been lied to, hunted, cornered, but every time you rise, they rise with you. Because you don't rule through fear, you lead through fire. And now, with your options closing like a fist, you decide it's better to die fighting than kneel in chains. You gather your generals. You map one last attack. Not retreat, not surrender, but one final blow, aimed straight at Crassus. You look around your war council. Most are scarred, many are barefoot, all of them are tired, but they nod. Because if the world is going to end, better to burn than to fade. You ride to the front line before dawn, the cold creeping through your bones, and the ground still soft with dew. Around you, thousands of eyes watch, some young, some hardened by too many winters, too many losses. They tighten straps, whisper prayers, check blades dulled from overuse. This is it. Crassus has drawn his lines near the Salaris River. You know the terrain. You know he's dug in. And you know that waiting means Pompey will arrive to take the credit, to rob you of the one thing you've earned, this ending, on your terms. You've heard the rumors. Crassus doesn't want a clean victory. He wants to erase you. He wants to feed your army into Roman history as a footnote, a broken rebellion crushed under proper Roman discipline. You won't let him. You plan the assault not like a last stand, but like a hammer strike. You gather what cavalry you have left, thin and ragged, but willing. You break your infantry into 3 columns. You place Gannicus and Castus on the flanks, saving the center for yourself. No banners, no speeches, just a nod. You advance. Crassus's legions hold their ground, red cloaks snapping in the wind, shields locked like jaws, but they're not expecting speed. They're not expecting a full charge before midday. You give them no time. You crash into their lines like a wave of thunder. The scream of steel fills the sky. The first row of legionaries folds under the weight of your fury. You fight like a man with nothing to lose, because it's true. This isn't just war, it's declaration. You cut down 3 soldiers in a span of seconds. You're moving like you did in the arena. But here, no crowd, no sand, no mercy. Just the thud of Roman armor, the wet slap of mud, and the unrelenting rhythm of survival. For a moment, you feel it, hope. Your left flank pushes deeper than expected. Castus is a whirlwind. Even the Roman reserves are caught off guard. You almost believe this will work. But Crassus didn't come unprepared. His legions fall back, then pivot, a feigned collapse. He channels your forces into a kill box, boxed between 2 ridges. Then he sends in the cavalry, fresh troops, shields glinting with the morning sun. They slam into your rear. The trap closes. Still, you don't retreat. You hold the center. You fight like your sword is part of your arm. Around you, your men fall, not in chaos, but with purpose. No one flees. They dig in. They shout your name, one last time. Then Gannicus goes down, surrounded, bleeding out in silence. Castus falls trying to rally the left, slashed down by a Roman officer you never see again. Your world shrinks to the width of your blade. One by one, your fighters fall. Some beg for death. Some curse Rome with their final breath. Others just stop. You're bleeding now. Legs sliced open, shoulder cracked, but you stand until they overwhelm you. 10 men, then 15. Then the world turns red and quiet. After the battle, Crassus walks the field. His soldiers gather the bodies, burn the wounded, execute the captured. They never find you. No armor, no sword, no corpse. It drives them mad. Crassus orders extra patrols, digs extra graves. Rome needs your body for closure, for propaganda, but you deny them that. Because a body ends a story, and your story has just begun. The battlefield is quiet now. Charred wood, flies, buzzards circling in wide, slow arcs. The kind of silence that only comes after something huge has died. Not just people, but a movement, an idea, a dream. That's what Rome tells itself. Crassus declares victory. He writes reports to the Senate, careful with his words, careful to frame himself as the savior of Italy. He demands recognition, parades, a triumph. But the Senate hesitates. Because Pompey is already marching back from the north, grinning like a fox. Pompey never faced you in battle, but he chased down fleeing remnants of your shattered force, executed them, and claimed that he ended the war. Rome listens to him. Pompey's got charisma. The soldiers love him. He gets the cheers. Crassus gets the paperwork. They both run for consul. Rome's already rewriting the story, turning your rebellion into a rivalry between 2 Roman nobles. 2 millionaires dueling with egos while your deadline the Appian Way. But the people? They know better. In the streets of Subura, in the slums of Transtiberum, your name slips through alleys like smoke. Spartacus, they whisper. Not as a curse, but as a question. What if? What if he had made it north? What if the pirates had come? What if Crassus had failed? What if Rome could be broken? No statues are built for you, but graffiti appears. A helmet scrawled on a wall, a broken chain drawn beneath a slave's name. Secret symbols, a silent language of resistance. Because you weren't just a warrior, you were a mirror. You showed the world what Rome was made of: blood, cruelty, spectacle. But you also showed them what it feared most: belief. See, Rome could handle bandits, it could handle riots, but it didn't know how to handle a vision. A man who didn't want a crown, who didn't want to replace the Senate, who just wanted to live free and let others do the same. That terrified them. Even decades later, long after Crassus is dead, after Pompey is assassinated, after Caesar crosses the Rubicon and burns down the Republic, your story still haunts them. They tell it in schools to remind children of what happens when order is challenged. They tell it in camps to keep soldiers loyal. They tell it in shadows to keep slaves afraid. But the story never quite stays buried. In distant provinces, rebels still whisper your name before raising their fists. In the arenas, gladiators still dream of breaking out. And in every unjust corner of every empire, there's someone, somewhere, thinking, if Spartacus could do it. That's your legacy. Not the battles, not the victories, the possibility. Waiting for continue, Rome marches on, expanding, conquering, devouring the world in roads and taxes and columns. Crassus becomes consul, just as he dreamed. But dreams have a funny way of turning on the dreamer. He grows restless, wants more, needs to prove himself not just a rich man, not just the butcher of a slave rebellion, but a conqueror. So he turns east, to Parthia. He raises an army, buys influence, and crosses into Mesopotamia with visions of glory. He doesn't return. At Carrhae, his legions are annihilated. His head is taken and used in a Parthian play, mocked, spat on, held aloft. Rome loses tens of thousands of men. And Crassus? He dies far from the streets he once strutted through, far from the crosses he once ordered lined along the Appian Way. And Pompey? He climbs higher. For a while, he aligns with Caesar, then breaks from him. Power becomes more important than loyalty. In the end, Pompey flees to Egypt, hoping for refuge, hoping his fame still counts. They cut off his head before he can step off the boat. The men who killed you? They vanish in history's rear view, footnotes in someone else's story. But you? You endure. Even the historians who tried to minimize you, Roman chroniclers with sharp pens and cold hearts, couldn't ignore you. They couldn't deny what you accomplished. You forced the Republic to reveal its fear. You exposed how fragile their order was. You weren't born in Rome. You weren't educated by scholars. You didn't write philosophy, lead a Senate faction, or bathe in marble baths. You broke your chains. And that alone was revolutionary. They say you were Thracian. Maybe. Maybe not. No one's sure. They say you were a soldier before a slave. Could be. Doesn't matter. What matters is what you became. You were the ghost in their machine. Even centuries later, when empires fall and rise again, when revolutions explode in Paris, in Haiti, in the Americas, your name is carved into flags, shouted in taverns, painted on barricades. You never asked to be a symbol. But that's what you became. Because you showed the world that a man born in chains could be more than a footnote, that he could threaten an empire, not with gold or gods or politics, but with freedom. And the world never forgot that. You've become a story they can't quite erase. They try, of course. Rome, the master of monuments and memory, rewrites you as a cautionary tale, a violent flare-up, an anomaly, a footnote in a chapter of things not to do. But you left something in the cracks of their empire, a seed. And seeds don't forget how to grow. Even now, in the back alleys of Roman cities, long after your bones have vanished into the soil, slave children play games with your name on their lips. Spartacus, they whisper, when they pretend to fight soldiers. Spartacus, when they dare each other to sneak past the guards. Not because they know the whole story, but because they know what it means. Defiance, freedom, hope. In time, even the poets begin to pick up your tale. Some cast you as a savage, an ungrateful slave who bit the hand that civilized him. But others, quietly, see you as something more dangerous, a man who saw clearly, because you didn't want to rule. That's what unnerved them. They could understand Caesar, they could understand Hannibal, even Sulla, the dictator. Power, they knew how to deal with that. But freedom? Not as a reward, not as a grant from a master, but as a birthright? That's what you represented. A man without a senate, without a god's favor, without a famous lineage, who still stood up blade in hand and said no, and somehow kept saying it for 2 years. They say rebellion is contagious. They were right. After you, uprisings flare up all across the empire. Small ones, brutal ones, snuffed out quickly. But never again does Rome sleep as soundly as it did before Spartacus walked free, even as Caesar reshapes the republic into an empire, even as Augustus paints his version of eternal order, even as Nero burns the city and blames it on others. Your story hums underneath, like a pulse no one can quite silence. You become a symbol that refuses to die. And centuries later, when Rome is dust and the Colosseum is broken teeth in the earth, your name survives in scrolls, in myths, in movements. It leaps across time, a whisper in peasant revolts, a banner in revolution, a name on a poster, a statue, a screen. Spartacus, not the man with the sword, but the idea that no chain is permanent, not if you dare to break it. You didn't set out to change the world. You just wanted to go home. That's how it started back in Capua under the sun-baked sands of the arena. You weren't trying to topple a republic or inspire revolutions. You weren't reading philosophy or writing manifestos. You were a man in chains, thrown into a pit, told to die for the amusement of others. And you said, no. That refusal, so small, so human, echoed louder than any speech in the forum. Because it wasn't made in marble halls. It was made in blood, in fire, in the mud-soaked fields of Italy. And it was made by someone no one expected. Rome thought it had perfected slavery, institutionalized it, rationalized it, glorified it. They made it seem natural, inevitable. They told themselves slaves didn't feel like citizens, didn't think like them, that they were different, lesser. But then you came along. A man with no title, no legal name, no formal education. And yet, you proved more dangerous than a dozen kings. Because you understood Rome, not just its roads and legions, but its weaknesses, its arrogance, its blindness, its belief that someone like you could never organize, strategize, or lead. They underestimated you at every turn, called you a bandit, a fluke, a curiosity. But you held out, and when you fell, you didn't fall like a criminal. You fell like a commander. That's what the soldiers remembered. Even some of Crassus's men, grizzled veterans hardened by conquest, admitted it years later. Spartacus didn't die like a slave. He died like a general. That's why your name survived, because it wasn't just about fighting. You built something. A society of rebels, yes, but with shared food, shared leadership, shared hope. You made decisions not out of vengeance, but vision. Who else could hold together an army of Thracians, Gauls, Germans, Africans, Italians, people who couldn't even speak the same language but marched under one banner? Only someone who understood that freedom isn't given. It's built, in the dirt, in the blood, and in the belief that no one deserves a collar around their neck. So here you are, dead, yes, but not forgotten, not erased. Rome didn't write your story. The people did, and they wrote it not with ink, but with memory. Passed from mouth to mouth, campfire to alleyway, classroom to battlefield. Every time someone rises up against impossible odds, every time a prisoner dreams of breaking free, every time a leader chooses principle over power, you are there. Not in body, but in flame. You'd laugh, maybe, if you could see it now, centuries after your death. Empires rise and fall, languages shift, borders vanish, but your name still lingers. Not because of what you owned, not because of what you conquered, but because of what you defied. Modern historians argue over you. Was Spartacus a revolutionary or just a survivalist, a military genius or a desperate fugitive? Did he want to end slavery or just escape it? The truth is, it doesn't matter, because what echoes isn't what you said, it's what you showed. You showed what happens when people stop believing in the lie that power is permanent, that titles mean destiny, that laws are always just, that suffering is natural. You were a man, that's it. Not a demigod, not born under omens. Just a man who looked at a world soaked in cruelty and said, I won't play by these rules. And when you did that, others followed. That's the thing about revolution. It doesn't begin with a speech, or a vote, or a ceremony. It begins when someone refuses. You didn't write manifestos, but you lived one. You didn't build a nation, but you built belief. Every village you liberated, every slave you welcomed, every Roman formation you broke, it told a story louder than any scroll in the Senate archives. Even now, people try to shape your legacy. In some versions, you're a freedom fighter. In others, a dangerous radical. To some, a hero. To others, a warning. But you never needed statues. The fact that Rome, mighty, terrifying Rome, had to pour armies' gold and blood into silencing you, that is the monument. It tells the story all on its own. Because when an entire civilization feels threatened by the idea that a single man could make others believe in a different world, you've already won. And while Rome celebrated its victories with marble and bronze, your story, your real story, was carved in fire, in scars, in echoes. Every time a people rise from dust, refuse to kneel, and fight with nothing but will. There you are, not as a ghost, but as a reminder. A whisper in the storm that says, remember what we did. Remember what's possible. And so here we are, at the end, or maybe the beginning. You're gone, yes. Your bones lost to time. No grave, no monument, no battlefield marked with your name. Rome made sure of that. But erasure only works when memory dies. And your memory is stubborn. You weren't supposed to win, weren't even supposed to matter. Rome saw you as a glitch in the system, a flicker of resistance in a world that was orderly, civilized, and proudly cruel. But glitches expose flaws, and that's what you were. Not just a man with a sword, but a crack in the myth of Roman invincibility. A fracture that showed how thin the veneer of control really was. That when you strip away marble and coin and law, an empire is just men, frightened men, trying to keep others in chains. You made them afraid. Because you didn't just escape your cage, you broke it, burned it, and taught others to question why it was ever built at all. That's why your story spread, not through official scrolls or monuments, but through whispers, through the dreams of the oppressed, through the fists of the rebels, through the songs of the defiant. Spartacus became more than a name. He became an idea. And ideas? They travel. You show up in peasant rebellions in medieval Europe. Your name shouted on barricades by people who couldn't point to Thrace on a map, but felt what you stood for. You show up in books, in revolutions, in freedom movements across continents, in movies, in speeches, in graffiti scrawled on prison walls. You even show up where power lives, quoted by generals who don't understand you, admired by leaders who never faced what you did, co-opted by those who would have chained you themselves. But still, you endure, because you weren't just fighting for one people, one moment, one escape. You were fighting for something eternal, the right to choose your life, the right to rise, the right to say no more. And that's why your rebellion never really ended. Because every time someone stands up, every time a voice says enough, every time a person breaks the chain instead of passing it on, that's Spartacus. That's you, waiting for continue. So what do we make of it? This tale of a gladiator who became a general, a slave who shook the republic? You started as a number, just another name on a slave manifest, another body to bleed in the sand. But you didn't stay that way. You became something no one expected, a threat, a legend, a possibility. Rome tried to define you as a mistake, as a blip, as an anomaly. But you proved that power isn't about bloodlines or buildings. It's about belief. And when belief spreads, when it lives in the bones of thousands who'd rather die on their feet than live on their knees, then even an empire trembles. You didn't write history, but you moved it. And centuries later, your name still rings. Not because of your victories, but because of your defiance. You showed us that the ones who start the biggest fires are rarely the ones we expect. That rebellion doesn't need crowns or cathedrals, just courage. So if you're ever standing in the dust, feeling small, surrounded by giants with titles and armies and gold, remember Spartacus. He had none of those. He just had a cause. And he dared. Finish the script, enjoy listening, and subscribe to the channel for the next video.